Each and every Monday is $9 Monday at both WagerTalk.com and SportsMemo.com, when all daily picks packages are priced at only $9, including 5% best bets, normally priced at $35. As an added bonus, any picks packages loaded early for Overnight Tuesday or action during the week will also be priced at $9 until midnight on Monday. So make sure to take advantage of getting these $25 and $35 picks for only $9 before the clock strikes 12 and they return to regular price.
Welcome into the NFL Opening Line Report. Championship week is upon us. I am Drew Martin, like always, each and every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, joined by the legend himself, Teddy Covers on Twitter, at Teddy_Covers. We're getting you on the right side of some of these moves, guys. Side total for championship weekend. Teddy, happy Monday morning to you. How you feeling, buddy?
Hey, good to be here, Drew. Unfortunately, I'm not coming in off a good weekend. But you're kicking ass right now and taking names. Congrats on a big NFL run. Unfortunately, I'm not there with you. I had Dallas yesterday and Buffalo yesterday, and neither of those two were right sides or covered the point spread. So disappointing weekend. Nonetheless, we've got 3 games left in the season. 2 of them come this weekend. Let's break them all down.
Let's get after it. And Teddy, shout out to you. I know people DMing me on Twitter saying how much this show has helped them. And Teddy, it's helped me out. So I know that you're in bounce back mode, which Teddy off of bounce back mode has been good, guys. But you're putting me on some of the right sides and totals here with just kind of the information that you're giving out on the show. I know the people out there are loving it, and I'm liking it personally here, guys. So let's get into the games. We got AFC and NFC championship games on Sunday. 3 o'clock is the NFC, 6:30 Eastern time is the AFC. Both games on Sunday here. We're going down in order, guys. Feel free to chime out any questions you might have in the reply section on the Wager Talk YouTube channel, or come join us live in the live chat. So first game up here, Teddy, we got 3-2-1, 3-2-2, 3 o'clock Eastern, 12 noon Pacific kick. San Francisco 49ers, Philadelphia Eagles. We get the Eagles minus 2.5 point home favorites, 45.5 being the total for the right to play in the Super Bowl. San Francisco at Philadelphia. What are we thinking here, Teddy?
So I want to read, I cut and paste it up. So my powering for the number for the game is Philly minus 1.5 for what it's worth, which isn't enough to make a play on San Fran unless it hits 3. And it's not enough to play on Philly unless it's lower than Pick'em, based purely on power, my power ratings. But then again, I should probably upgrade Philly. Jalen Hurts didn't look like he was in too much pain in that win over the Giants, so maybe my number came a little bit short. But I want to start by reading. I just cut and pasted these from 2 different sources this morning, and I thought it was fascinating to talk about. All right. After the 49ers beat, this is the first of the 2. After the 49ers beat the Cowboys, covering as 4-point favorites on Sunday, several sportsbooks opened with the Eagles as a 1.5 point home favorite against the 49ers, and a total of 45 or 45.5. That line quickly moved to a consensus number of Eagles minus 2 on Sunday night, with DraftKings and a few others dealing Eagles minus 2.5. That was from one mainstream source. Here's another mainstream source. In the NFC, the Eagles open as 3.5 point favorites, but the spread immediately moved down to 2.5 and is now Philadelphia 1.5. Be careful where you get your info. Did this line open 1.5? Did this line open 3.5? The answer is both. Different books. What I try to do when I talk about where the market is moving is talk about not any one book, but where the market is moving. And what we saw last night with this game and how it was bet was they were taking the plus 3.5 and laying the 1.5. And now we're seeing pretty much a 2.5 across the board. There is some 2.5 with juice. I'm not convinced this gets to 3. I don't think there's significant urgency if you like Philly. That being said, 3 is a key number. And if you want the Eagles, lay 2.5 now, because it could go to 3. There's a decent chance it'll get there. And some of the early consensus numbers I'm seeing as well are pro Philadelphia. So we could emergency betting alert this. 2.5. I don't know that it goes higher. But if you do like the Philadelphia side, I would lock in sooner rather than later and recognize that most of what you're reading, and these are mainstream sources that I respect. Again, one of the open at 1.5, moved up to 2.5. The other one says they open at 3.5, moved down to 1.5. The answer is arbitrage on Sunday night. Monday morning is where where this line is likely to move. And so far today, we have seen money for Philadelphia. Now, the two teams are coming off very different type of games. Philly had 4 touchdowns in the first half, and the Giants had no points and 64 yards. And it was the injuries were a non-factor. The game itself wasn't a game that Philly was tested in the slightest. They had starters sitting in the fourth quarter of that contest. And, there were questions about Jalen Hurts and how healthy he was going to be. They had 7 designed runs for Jalen Hurts in that ballgame. He ran the football a little bit. He only took 1 sack all game. And that was when he was about to throw downfield. It wasn't like he was under a ton of pressure. But really, Jalen Hurts was minimized in the Eagles' game plan because they had Miles Sanders and Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell, who combined for 234 yards on 35 carries. Not going to be easy to have that same level of success against a San Francisco team that hasn't given up anything on the road. This is a game where Jalen Hurts is going to have to make plays throwing downfield, which he didn't have to do against the Giants last week. San Fran's got the longest winning streak in the NFL, 12 straight games. You have playmakers all over the field. You have defensive playmakers. What was amazing in yesterday's game, and some of this might be Mike McCarthy, but the fact that San Fran's linebackers, Warner and Greenlaw, were able to defend the Cowboys' wide receivers. And when you have linebackers that are capable of matching up with their opponent's wide receivers, boy, that makes for a pretty strong defense. And certainly the Niners were able to do that yesterday. Can they do it against Philly? We'll find out. San Fran is certainly the hottest team in the league right now. And defensively, we haven't seen anyone move the football up and down the field against San Fran, except for that one game near the end of the season where the offense clicked. And all this Brock Purdy, now certainly the stakes go up for Brock Purdy. It's the toughest defense. He faced a tough defense this past Sunday, made a fair few mistakes. San Fran was good enough to win the game. Now he's going on the highway and facing another tough defense. Not going to be easy for San Fran, but certainly at 45.5 is the total for this ball. Remember, all 4 games, every game except for the Monday night game went over, and the wild card weekend, every game stayed under. This past weekend, of course, the only weekend the Monday night game didn't go over because of the 4 missed extra points from Mar. But this past week, obviously, 4 games, all 4 stayed under. And this is a matchup, while both these offenses are potent, the defenses might be the better units on the field. I would not be shocked if we see some under money show for San Fran Philly. We have not yet seen it, 45.5, the current prevailing total.
Teddy, is this one where you think side and total are correlated here? San Francisco and the under and Philadelphia and the over? Or no, it sounded like you're pretty positive on the Eagles' defense.
Sure. Philly's defense has done everything they've been asked to do basically all year. And San Fran has a third-string QB who's going to be in a tough spot this week on the highway. This is not a game where I'm in any rush to play over the total, and I don't sense a correlation between San Fran to the over, Philly versus the over. Either one of these two teams would be happy to win the game 16-13. Either one of these two games the other team would be happy to win the game 35-32. And both have shown the ability to win games in both fashions. So it's not a game where I see significant correlation at all between side and total.
And we're seeing Philadelphia -2.5 here, guys. DraftKings going to -120, Circa at -115, a prominent offshore flirting with -120 as well, Teddy. So I guess we could leave it no emergency betting alert, but you're likely to see -3 on Philadelphia rather than a pick 'em by kickoff, right?
The opinion of the market this morning has been pro-Philadelphia. All right, last night we saw a lot of arbitrage. This morning, we've seen the sharp money come towards Philly. We have not yet seen it push this number up to 3 anywhere. It could, wouldn't shock me if it did. Like I said, this isn't an emergency. The line isn't moving as we speak. And I like to give emergency betting alerts when I know this line is moving. I don't know this line's going up. But
Okay.
if you like the Eagles, I bet them sooner rather than later. Not going to hurt to lock in at 2.5 on Philadelphia.
NFL opening line report. Championship weekend here, guys. San Francisco, Philadelphia. We got the second game coming up as well. As if you're liking the content here, guys, please smash that like button. Feel free to reply below and come join us in the chat box. We are going to have some time to take some questions, so feel free to fire away. We also got a bunch of questions from last week's show, Teddy, with people in the comments section. So I'll fire them away at you after we break down the AFC Championship game right now, 6:30 Eastern time, Cincinnati and Kansas City. We got 47 being the total. And Teddy, we're seeing a couple pick'ems and a little bit more Kansas City -1 as the favorite. There are pick'ems out there available. Talking about the hottest team in the NFL, San Francisco. Well, we're moving to the second hottest team here, the Cincinnati Bengals, up against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs at home, commanding, let's call it a -1 price tag as the home favorite. But keep in mind, guys, there are pick'ems both in Vegas and offshore. What are we thinking here? Bengals and Chiefs.
Yeah, the Bengals have a pretty good betting bandwagon right about now, being that they continue to win games and cover points. And this is the truth of it, all right? If you hadn't read 15 articles during the week talking about how concerned everyone was about Cincy's offensive line, oh my God, they're missing 3 starters. You hadn't known they were missing 3 starters, you wouldn't have seen it on the field. The 3 backups, you have cluster injuries. Look, this is what we do when we have cluster injuries at any position, especially in the postseason. You bet against that team. Period. Sometimes you bet against them large. I did on Sunday. And again, watching the game, which team's missing the 3 starting offensive linemen? Didn't look like Cincy was. I'll leave it at that. My powering number for this game is KC2. That's with a healthy Mahomes. The markets, there were 2s out there. There were also pick'ems out there at the open last night. And it's kind of settled. We've seen the early money come for Cincinnati. Again, we're talking about the single best point spread team in the NFL. Dating back to the middle of last season, I think I got them 22 4-1 now, 21 4-1 their last 26 ball games. I mean, if you're betting the Bengals, they've been the gift that keeps on giving. I rode them for a while earlier in the season. I did not ride them down the stretch or here in the postseason. That is obviously a disappointment for the bankroll right about now. Cincy is playing the no respect card, and they're playing it very well. Certainly the fact that this game is in Kansas City is a pretty good motivator for a team that beat the Chiefs last year, beat the Chiefs this year, beat the Chiefs the meeting before that, in Arrowhead, multiple wins over Kansas City, and a team that went to the Super Bowl last year. And the market's finally this week showing the respect for Cincinnati. And again, when you read some of the mainstream stuff, after the Bengals dominated the Bills, the Westgate opened the line of KC -3 versus Cincy. That's funny. I saw the Westgate opener at Pick'em. So you have a variance. The consensus spread was a Pick'em. DraftKings had a -1. Offshore, there was a -2.5 and an over a 50.5. In 5 minutes, the line moved to Cincy -1, and the total dropped to 48.5 offshore. And again, these very early numbers, yes, they're the openers. Let's call it a market opener, not a single book opener. And we're going to call this -147 as the market opener, just like we're going to call 2.5 and 45.5. We're going to track our line moves off of these numbers for the first game. 2.5, 45.5 for the 49ers Eagles. So the difference between any one book and the market, what you're seeing in all these mainstream reports is this book, that book, this book. What I'm trying to do with my analysis here is this is what the market is doing. So we have seen market money for Cincy off the openers, just like we saw I guess a little bit of market money for Philly as well. And of course, the Cincinnati Bengals now a team with a pretty big betting bandwagon. But this line, I can't say it's going to move based on Patrick Mahomes' injury. Let's talk about the Mahomes injury here for a minute. We have seen under money come in, I think, as a result of the Mahomes injury. And if you like the under, 47 right now is the highest number I'm seeing. I'm also seeing, no, there's a 47.5 out there. 1. But I'm starting to see 46.5 pop up. There's urgency here for the under as well. And this has everything to do with Mahomes' injury. If Mahomes ends up being fine, well, you can expect some money coming in back later in the week on the over. But right now, they're playing under. And he's been diagnosed with a high ankle sprain. All right. Michael Thomas for New Orleans had a high ankle sprain. He was out all year. Odell Beckham had a high ankle sprain. He was out, For quarterbacks, we've seen Tom Brady play through a high ankle sprain. We've seen Peyton Manning play it. We've seen Mac Jones and Jimmy Garoppolo were forced to miss time. Roethlisberger tried to play through one last year. It didn't work real well. And then he took time off. Mahomes was able to come back in the game after the injury, but the scramble ability wasn't there. I think he scrambled one time after he got hurt. And after the first quarter of the game, he didn't attempt a single deep pass. It was all dink and dunk, short passes and putting the ball in position for his receivers to make plays. The Patrick Mahomes injury is going to affect this point spread. All right. Depending on how he looks in practice every day, depending on whether he practices, depending on how, what the quotes are coming out of the KC locker room, this has the potential to be something that people are talking about all week and betting one way or another based on that day's practice report from Mahomes. One would anticipate that this game has that type of a feel to it, just how the betting action is going to go. It's all going to be based on Mahomes and Mahomes' health and how he looks in practice. So for a Monday morning saying which way this line going to move, I can't tell you. It's going to be largely a product of what the quotes we see and the reps we see from Patrick Mahomes in practice all week, or the lack thereof. So Chad Henne is not going to lead Kansas City to victory. Okay, I'll give Henne all the credit in the world for leading that 98-yard touchdown drive, but Chad Henne's not an NFL starting quarterback. We've seen all the lesser quarterbacks already get eliminated from the postseason. If Chad Henne does have to start here for KC, if Mahomes' injury is serious, who knows how high this line will go. I would make the difference between Mahomes and Henne at least a touchdown in my numbers, maybe more.
But, well, Teddy, let me ask you that. I mean, could we actually see this go to the Bengals like more than a touchdown favorite if it becomes apparent that Chad Henne's going out there to take the first snap?
You going to bet Kansas City with Chad Henne?
No. I mean, I guess it would be
anyone that's going to bet Kansas City. Yeah, the only one that's going to bet Kansas City with Chad Henne is the wise guys after the line has already moved. What's the buy price there? I would think it would be +7. Nobody's betting KC without Mahomes at less than a touchdown. Are they? 6.5, maybe?
Teddy, I'll tell you this. When Chad Henne stepped out there, I mean, I almost feel bad saying that. Like, I didn't realize he was still on an NFL roster, Teddy. Like, that was surprising to me. Did you know that?
Yeah. I watched preseason. I watch a ton of preseason.
Right, okay.
But, Chad, when you're a team like KC that's competing for championships, all right, you can't spend money at the backup quarterback position because you ain't going to win a championship with your backup quarterback. And the Chiefs have had a relatively low stress, low cost backup for many years. And Mahomes has allowed them to spend their money elsewhere because Mahomes doesn't miss a whole lot of time. If he misses this game, KC ain't going to the Super Bowl.
Interesting, man. I mean, hats off to him staying on an NFL roster that long. I think he graduated Michigan, 2007, spent some time on the Dolphins. I just hadn't heard about him in many years.
100 years ago. Yeah. And it's a good lifestyle, and it pays well.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he's got a bunch of money in the bank. Yeah.
Yeah. Backup QB is the job to have, in the NFL. And especially because whenever half the backup QBs, the first game they play, they get hurt because they haven't been taking hits,
Right.
That's the, in terms of stress/pain level versus money made, backup QB is the job. If I had an NFL job, that'd be the job I'd want.
Yeah, no argument here, guys. As we got question time here, we're also going to talk a little bit of futures. So fire away any questions. Teddy, futures book, which actually we can kind of mix the two with a comment from last week. Barrett Troops in the comment box, watch it on replay. So glad I watched this. Thanks for the speech on future bets. We need to be reminded of this periodically, given the nonstop marketing tactics of the sports books. And some other guys saying more Teddy rants. The people want more Teddy rants. So Christopher, thanks for chiming in. Barrett as well. And guys, talking about futures bets, Teddy and myself on last week's show talked about how it's usually not the smartest way to get down, just because it costs more to make the bet. Instead of minus 110, you're risking 110 to win 100. A lot of times it's like you're risking 140, meaning the sports books are taking more money. The VIG is higher. So Teddy, we got futures bets here. Any comments on that? And also, guys, we're seeing the Chiefs plus 250, Bengals plus 260, Eagles plus 270, and 49ers plus 280 at the MGM. I've seen the Niners as high as plus 310 out there, Teddy. But of course, if you're new to sports betting, risking 100 to win 250 on the Chiefs, and 280 on the 49ers, plus 270 on the Eagles, and plus 260 on the Bengals. Any thoughts here on the futures prices for the Super Bowl champion?
There ain't no favorite. You know? KC minus 250, Cincy minus 260, Philly minus 270, San Fran minus 280. That's not a favorite.
Plus. Yeah.
Plus. Thank you. Plus 250, 260. Yeah, you know the deal. But this is as tight a spread as I've seen between the four teams still alive ever. I haven't seen a tighter one. And obviously with neither home favorite being even favored by a field goal in this game, from a power rating standpoint, these teams are all bunched together really tight. Now let's talk about this. Plus 250, plus 260, plus 270, plus 280. Any of these teams you want to bet to win the Super Bowl. I ranted last week. I'm not going to rant this week. But the math here is a lot simpler. Okay. Whoever it is, you want to back, it doesn't matter which team you want to back. You play them on the money line this week. Then you roll your winnings over if they win, and you can play them on the money line in the Super Bowl. Or you can play half of it on the money line in the Super Bowl. You don't need to hedge and bet against yourself. But if you bet whatever team you want to win, you think is going to win on the money line, and just roll it over in the Super Bowl, doesn't matter which one of these teams you bet, Chiefs, Bengals, Eagles, 49ers, you're going to make more money with the rollover system than you will with the future bet. Future bets are the lazy way. The rollover system, you have to work every week and make a new bet every week, but you end up making a whole lot more money. But when you're talking about four teams still alive, all between plus 250 and plus 280 at the open, that tells us it's a pick 'em from here on out. And whatever little edges we find, we can anticipate some pretty compelling football this coming weekend. A lot on the line and teams that are very evenly balanced.
Well said, Teddy. Guys, NFL opening line report. We will be back next week as well, talking the Super Bowl. We'll also be doing off-season. We'll do NFL draft, a futures report as well, periodically right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. If you're liking the content, please smash the like button. Teddy covers, Drew Martin going live here, answering any questions, fire away in the live chat. We'll also answer any questions on next week's show in the reply section below on the YouTube channel, so fire away there. We do have some questions here. Zach B in the chat box. Teddy, do you factor in penalty statistics when capping totals? Seems to me teams with lots of offensive holding calls would be good for the under. What about factoring in penalties here, both sides and totals, Teddy? Is it part of your handicap?
So it's a great question. I'll get to it in just a minute. We're gonna do next week. We'll do the opening line report. We're just gonna talk about where the Super Bowl line opened and where it's gonna move, and our folks will be there. The week after that, Drew and I will talk about props and talk about where the props have opened and where they're moving and where the sharp money's coming. And Drew, I'd like to do a show the day after the Super Bowl. That way we can talk about what the openers are for next year's lines, and we can talk about some of the Super Bowl grading and some of the crazy action that happened that day. So we've got 3 more weeks. As long as it's okay with Drew, we'll do the show the day after. I like doing that show the day after the Super Bowl. A little,
yeah, me too.
It's a bow
absolutely,
on.
Teddy.
Yeah. And then after that, we'll take a little break. But as soon as whenever there's something interesting to talk about, we'll do an opening line report. And I expect to see win totals in the not too distant future after the regular season ends. When it comes to handicapping penalties, all right, there are look. there's a lot of different information that as a handicapper, we try to filter to figure out what's important and what's predictive versus what is reactive. Certainly, teams that have more holding penalties on offensive holding penalties, are likely to play more unders. Of course, you're in second and third and long, and instead of in positive down and distance situations. And when you don't have an elite offense and you have a ton of holding penalties, it takes the running game out of the equation. Of course, it is a factor. But the question is that predictive or reactive? If you look at these 4 teams this week and say, all right, and I don't know the holding penalty numbers. It's not something that I factor in because I haven't found a lot of info from that. The teams that, I shouldn't say that, because teams that commit a ton of penalties tend to commit a ton of penalties. You know if they're going to be offensive holdings or defensive. That's as much as the penalty stats that I look at. This team commits a ton of penalties. This team doesn't. Edge to the team that doesn't. But when it comes to the totals in the postseason, sometimes you're going to put too much info in your brain, and it leaves aside the basic fundamentals of the handicap. Penalties are a piece of the equation. Sure. I don't know how you predict it real well moving forward unless you have a team that gets a ton of holding calls every single week and you want to do the work on the refs and these refs call a ton of holding. It's doable. It's absolutely doable. But in terms of how much benefit you're going to get out of doing that work, I would anticipate your results will be modest. Not saying it can't work, but I'm not convinced that you're going to be able to, that time is going to be time well spent figuring out something that's predictive moving forward. Excellent question.
Yeah, great question. And one thing I think it's kind of tough to find out there, but Teddy, with totals betting in the NFL, is almost keep it to the referee, the referee group. And one thing I'm looking at doing, Teddy, and I haven't even really brought it fully in, is the referee groups, how often they call pass interference, because in the NFL, it's such a big penalty, particularly when it happens down the field. If they're calling that a lot, I'm looking to bet that game to the over. And if that group doesn't call pass interference a lot, then maybe a little bit more inclined to bet it towards the under, but not so much on the team. Put it more on the referee group and follow it that way. That's the way I'm going at it, Teddy.
Sure, we do a lot of that in baseball. Certainly, baseball totals. You're not betting an MLB total without knowing who's calling balls and strikes. All right, Not going to do it. And the guys that have the white strike zone, you're playing them they're playing them under, and the guys that have the relatively narrow strike zone, you're playing them over. And over a 5 or 10 year sample size, that really pays off. I haven't seen that in the NFL. Have you? I mean, have you gone where these like this particular refs crew every year calls more pass interference than the average? Sure, you're going to look it over, but I haven't seen that date.
No, I haven't either. It's just kind of thought that I was going to try to kind of bring into my handicapping, but we'll see how that goes.
And let me just make one last point here. The opening weekend of the playoffs went 5-1 to the over, with the only under coming because the kicker, Maher missed 4 extra points. And this past weekend went 4-0 to the under. Okay. It wasn't like the referee crews were vastly different. The games played out different. And sometimes, and the markets after all of the overs on the first weekend were a little bit hot towards overs. To me, that might be a better way of approaching it than trying to do all this work with refs and how many holding penalties they call and how many passing they call. This is the broader market picture.
Teddy, we got Dustin in the comments from last week saying, please read all in capitals. So he really wants this one read. Teddy, do you have a grading system for offensive and defensive linemen and their impact ? Something tells me you might, because you said you base your entire handicap on this. Please advise. Love the show. So what about a grading system for offensive and defensive linemen and their impact on the point spread?
So you can certainly find, I'll call it relatively mainstream data on offensive line and defensive line performance. It's many, the Football Outsiders or those type of sites will have all kinds of data. My personal data from offensive and defensive lines comes from two things: my eyes and the box scores. It's not like I'm rating every offensive lineman. Clearly, I thought Cincy would be negatively affected by missing 3 starting offensive linemen this past Sunday, and they weren't affected at all. They played every bit as good, if not better. So there are times where you think an offensive line is going to struggle, and it doesn't work out that way. I think certainly the snowy conditions weren't good for Buffalo's pass rush, and it positively affected Cincinnati in that game more than Buffalo. But it's not always a scenario that where each individual, because when you're starting to grade individual linemen, you don't have to grade the linemen, you got to read their backups. Mm-hmm. My sense, again, I watch a lot of preseason football. Does the team have offensive line depth? Don't they? Does this offense start working when 1 or 2 linemen go down, or doesn't it? When you have a situation like Cincy where 3 linemen go down and they've been healthy all year, and then 3 linemen go down, bang, bang, bang like that, you expect a drop off. Didn't happen. I was wrong. But that wasn't based on my grade on any individual lineman. It was based on my thoughts on the unit as a whole. And from what I've seen over since, when offensive linemen were in the game that aren't starters, and from what I saw them in the preseason.
Like it, Teddy. A couple more comments here, guys. We got Coin saying Burrow is 16-7 against the spread as a dog in his career. Thanks for that, Coin. I'll also add to Teddy's point, they're 21-4-1 against the spread, talking about Cincinnati here. That is a heck of a run, and I just did some research this morning. They are the most profitable team since 2020. Each of the 3 years, all in the profits. And by far, by the way, they've been the best bet in the NFL. Teddy, a question for you. Does scheduling matter in the setup of the schedule? Both of these 2 games in conference championship week. This question is for myself because I'm wondering it. San Francisco and Cincinnati are both on the road, and they both have 1 day less preparation time. How much is that factoring into your handicap?
Some, but not a ton. It's not like these 2 teams. No one's played a game with a day less prep than anyone at this stage of the season. They've all done it before. It's the kind of thing that you pay attention to, but it's not something that single-handedly is going to get me to the window backing either of the home teams just because of that. Again, we talk about making a case for one team or the other, and this is kind of one of those blocks that you might stack to try to make a case for one of the home teams. But to me, it's not anything that I'm going to bet blindly. I don't think it's that negative a situation. This isn't like a team that played Monday night and then has to play Saturday, an opposing squad, and the other team hasn't played for a week and a half. It's not anyone in a particularly negative situational spot or scheduling spot. They're not great spots, but it's not a disaster spot. And of course, the early game for San Fran isn't a true early game. It's 2 hours later than your normal early start games for the West Coast teams traveling east, which is something that we know.
Like it, Teddy. Good stuff, guys. Thanks for the questions. If you got anything else, fire away. But it's a pretty good amount of them in a pretty good championship week NFL opening line report here, Teddy. So, man, great information. 2 games, got them in the books. Do you have any final thoughts you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
I don't know. Enjoy the games. Good luck. Again, these are, this is a fairly, it's only unique in the sense that there's no favorite, right? And usually when there's 4 teams left, somebody's a favorite or somebody's an underdog. We're seeing right now, there's a betting bandwagon for all 4 of these teams. The biggest factors likely to inflict the point spread, certainly for KC Cincy, going to be Mahomes and the injury reports. That's something to pay attention to all week. For San Fran Philly, but all Philadelphia money based on my assessment since the opener. I'm not convinced it gets to 3, but if you like the Eagles at 2.5, I wouldn't hesitate getting to the betting window right now. That's my final. That's my closing thoughts, Drew.
Okay, I like it, Teddy. No Cinderella story. It's 1-2 from the NFC in terms of the seeding, and 1-3, I believe, with Cincinnati knocking off Buffalo in the AFC. So,
But of course, since he's only 3, because they didn't get to play the rest of the, they missed that one key game that may have affected their seeding. They may well have been the number 2 seed.
yeah, Teddy. Actually, last question for you, because people out there might. Why did you say the snow helped Cincinnati maybe a little bit and it hurt Buffalo?
I thought that the Bills' pass rush against the Bengals playing with 3 backup linemen, the Bills' pass rush was not effective. I thought the weather conditions were a factor.
Yeah. Okay, and it didn't affect Cincinnati in that same way on the other side?
Buffalo had a lot of problems yesterday.
Sure. I was surprised by it because it's in Buffalo, you know?
Of the issues, okay, of like the when you're in the pre-game handicap, Buffalo's pass rush is going to get at Cincinnati since he's got the bad the struggling offensive line. The weather conditions affected Buffalo's ability to get after the pass. It wasn't like the Bengals were in the backfield all day against Josh Allen. Josh Allen didn't play well again, and then the Bills as a team didn't play well. But I thought the weather specifically hampered Buffalo's pass rush against the Cincy defense that was missing key players, a Cincy offensive line that was missing key players. So that was the factor of the weather in that ballgame. It didn't help the Bills, even though in theory Buffalo and snow should help the Bills. In this instance, didn't.
Like it, Teddy. Yeah, I'm picking up what you're laying down. Good stuff. Thanks everybody out there for watching. Please smash that like button. Check out Teddy Covers, WagerTalk, and SportsMemo.com. I am Drew Martin. We'll be back next Monday, guys. Come back and join us 10 a.m. Pacific time right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Smash that like button. Cash those tickets. We'll talk next week.
Each and every Monday is $9 Monday at both WagerTalk.com and SportsMemo.com. When all daily picks packages are priced at only $9, including 5% best bets, normally priced at $35. As an added bonus, any picks packages loaded early for Overnight Tuesday or action during the week will also be priced at $9 until midnight on Monday. So make sure to take advantage of getting these $25 and $35 picks for only $9 before the clock strikes 12 and they return to regular price.